Perfect. Okay. I'm Linda from the Upper Saddle River Library. I'd like to welcome everybody to this evening's program. We are very lucky. We have Master Gardener Linda Flynn, who's going to discuss gardening for butterflies and birds, which really is quite an important thing right now. I was even just reading an article in today's Bergen Record about it. So with that, I am going to now mute myself and pass it along to Linda.
Oh, let me ask you, Linda, were you going to keep questions on the side or something?
Yes, I will monitor the chat, or if, and again, we're not that big of a group. So Linda said that if you did have a question, if everybody is muted right now, if you wanted to unmute yourself, if you had a question right away, or if you post it in the chat, I will monitor the chat the entire time as well, and keep Linda abreast of any questions that are in there.
All right. Sounds good to me. So turning it over to me now. I'm in charge. All right. First of all, I'm very delighted to be talking to the gardening people of the Upper Saddle River Library, and what a pretty library it is. And I'm the president of the board of the Johnson Public Library in Hackensack, so I know a little bit about libraries. But my master gardener career started after I retired. I wanted to go there before I retired, but they said, no, you have to take the classes and blah, blah, blah. So I had to wait till 2016, and that was my graduating year. So I've gotten, in all those years, I've had a lot of experience, and I've had a lot of successes and a couple of failures, and it's all about gardening. It's all about being outside. So what you see in front of you right now are just a sampling. These are actual photographs of my own, from my own garden, and you can see there's a lot of coneflower flowers, and we have some zinnias on the bottom, and the orange, of course, is butterfly weed. So these are all things that originally I got into gardening through my science. I was a science teacher for 25 years. So I'm just going to start moving this forward. Enter, right? Okay. And my voyage into gardening was starting as a science teacher, trying to get my students interested in getting new eyes about nature, about the environment. I would take them out around the school. We'd listen for squirrels, identify birds. You know, they're easily hooked. And that was my goal. So I was always looking for new ways to make science and nature be a very important part of my teaching in my classroom. So it turns out, and of course, if you want to be happy for a lifetime, be a gardener. That's really a very excellent comment. And this goldenrod that you see here, you see some monarchs. And this goldenrod, there's a lot of it down the Jersey Shore. And people who live down by Wildwood, they have a festival even where they have several days where these monarchs group in the thousands, and they hang on the goldenrod. Goldenrod is the last little bit of energy and nectar they're going to pick up before they make their huge trip. But I'm going to talk to you about that a little bit later. So here's a little introduction to being a teacher. My students, I would be raising monarch butterflies all summer long because I had learned how to do that through the Monarch Teacher Network. And I brought that information and that skill into my classroom. I was able to get a grant to do a butterfly garden. And what you see here are cages with butterflies that have just emerged, and they're waiting. Their wings are drying. You can't just throw them outside. They're very damp and they don't get to fly for at least a couple of hours. And you also see some chrysalis hanging there. And you see my kids were always amazed about it. I let them put the butterflies on the flowers, and you'll see a little tiny tag on the bottom right. And that little tag, I have to put it on the butterfly using a little toothpick. It's got a number on it and a phone number, and you put it on your butterfly, you set the butterfly free, and then should anybody in Mexico find that butterfly with that number, they take it to the Monarch Watch, and they submit the number, and then they keep a record of how many butterflies come from the states. They even know the state, the town, where you released it. So I would do that with my students early in school because the monarchs are migrators, which I think everybody knows about. So what we've got here is what it looks like when you're raising monarch butterflies. First of all, the eggs are super, super tiny. First of all, you have to have milkweed. Let me back it up to the very beginning. So milkweed, the traditional native milkweed is the best. And it is a little bit invasive. I'll talk a little bit about that later. But what I've got here are photographs of me collecting eggs. You can see how tiny the little egg is on the left hand. I put a dime there for kids to see. And you can see how tiny that little egg is. Now, when I go searching for eggs, I have to wear my glasses or bring a magnifying glass because they're really super tiny. And then I collect the leaves, bring them inside, put them in a plastic container, and then I have to feed them every single day because all the caterpillars do is poop and eat and poop and eat, and that is their job. Shed, go to the next phase and keep that going. So I would clean out the boxes in the evening, put nice paper towels, spray the leaves, put them away. And in the morning when I came down, there'd be nothing left in the boxes but piles of frass all over the place. And again, I would have to clean the boxes, put in more milkweed and keep feeding them. It's a big process. And I've done quite a few butterfly releases. You can see little tiny pictures and the big ones. When they get as big as your pinky, that's when they're getting ready to go into a chrysalis. So here's a chrysalis picture for you. And in the classroom, I would have the cage and the kids would, I'd have them and the kids would watch them. And if they were lucky, they might see something like this where the chrysalis, the caterpillar has gone into the J shape and he's going to emerge into his chrysalis. And what you see here is the skin splitting. So he shakes around, that pupa is moving around, does a little jig, it just twirls around until he curls up his skin up here and eventually he just knocks it off. And this is the very first beginnings of the chrysalis. It continues to harden to turn into that green one with the gold that I tell you, it looks like somebody painted it. Emergence is always a big thing, and the kids would go berserko if we were lucky enough to have a couple of them coming out. And we would spend, if there was a whole period, it was a period because we had to watch that. So you can see that while they're in a chrysalis, the butterfly is in a liquid state and being totally rearranged. I would love to see what's going on in there. But at the end, you're able to see the wings and the patterns, and then they slip out. And at this point, he's still wet and he needs a little bit of time to dry out before he can go seek the world. So if you don't know the story of the butterflies, when they come to New Jersey, they'll show up like in the beginning, at the end of June, the beginning of July. And these will be the butterflies that have come from Mexico. They've crossed across the Gulf of Mexico. They land in Texas. They are battered. They've spent the winter there. That group of butterflies will mate and lay their eggs, and they will die right there. And the problem with Texas is they're losing a lot of milkweed. So right now the monarchs are having a decline, and plus there's a disease that is causing their wings to crinkle and they don't form properly. That's a whole nother story. But anyway, the eggs that get laid in Texas, they hatch. And then those butterflies, they have the same lifespan as a regular summer butterfly, a couple of weeks. And they'll move a little further north, maybe to the Carolinas, and they'll lay their eggs and they'll die. Then those little eggs will hatch. They'll move further north to New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania. They'll lay their eggs and die. And they will go all the way up to Canada. And that will be the last group. That is the group that will migrate, which blows anybody's mind who stops to think about it. How do those little critters, after several generations, know they got to go back south? And they follow it. You can see it on satellite images in the evening. They fly really high in high groups. You don't really get to see them. And they make their way back to Mexico. So that's an incredible story. Having been a teacher and having done the training and did a lot of things with my students, the Monarch Teacher Watch, they got me a reduced rate to go see the Mexican colonies up in the mountains in Mexico. And you see the trees on the left, those branches would normally just be standing out, but as you approach it, they always look like they're dying. But what it is millions of monarchs. You can see the other photographs that show you clustered together, hanging on those branches, and they're just drooping. And butterflies don't weigh anything, but in numbers, they certainly do. So they spend the whole winter there. They struggle, a lot of them die, the ground's covered with a lot of them, but they survive. And then they go again across the Gulf, and the whole process starts again. And the thing with monarchs, only the Oyamel fir trees in Mexico are the only place they will hibernate in. So if the trees are being cut down by the native peoples up in the mountains, they're trying to control that. as the trees go, the monarchs will go as well. So we have it's a multi-point problem. And then just the Day of the Dead is because the Mexicans, they see that in November, they come towards them in Mexico and they never knew what they were. So they came up with this idea that they would be the souls of the departed. And they have parties in the cemeteries. And if you watched Encanto with Disney, that is a great cartoon for adults too. It's fabulous. The music is terrific. So that's just a little background as to how I got into gardening. So gardening, if you're gardeners, all of this is probably a little bit familiar to you. You have to know your environment. You have to know who you're gardening for. And in the beginning, when I gardened, it was any little flower, plant, or shrub that I saw in their nursery. And I said, oh, that's cute. I'll take it home. I'll pay attention a little bit to what the directions were. And that's not a good strategy. So 6 hours of light, when it says it needs sun, it needs 6 hours of sun. So most flowering plants need a lot of sun. And the problem is a lot of trees start growing because they start off so little and then they do the shade, the shadow, and that becomes a problem. But the big push now is to have host plants that are helpful for monarchs and butterflies and birds, and it's for nectar for these same creatures, and native plants because they have evolved here. So they are the sturdiest plants to have. Those coneflowers behind me, those have to be a number of years old, and they don't live forever, but they always seed themselves. And I go around in the fall and break up the heads and just spread those seeds again. And the next year I've got as many as I did the year before. So it's great fun in that, and they're terrific. So we're talking about butterflies and birds. And just so that you have this knowledge, of course, the monarchs is the most important butterfly right now for us to preserve because they are really starting to reach critical mass in being decimated. The goldfinch is our New Jersey state bird, and that is a really cute little critter, and you can lure them to your backyard without too much trouble. So that's my goal. After I got involved with my students and going to Mexico, my gardening strategy started to change because now I had a purpose for my gardening. It had to be for the butterflies. There had to be flowers and nectar. I do another talk where it's the secret life of herbs, and herbs will give you flowers, and the smaller little insects that need the nectar, they come in as well. Goldfinch and a lot of the other birds, they want the berries, they want the seeds. All of this is available to them if you know what you're looking for. So let's talk about pollinators. These are some of the local pollinators, your bumblebees. You can, our butterflies, the black swallowtail, I raised them too. I'll show you a couple of pictures. The yellow tiger swallowtail. I had a few tulip trees in my yard, and that's where they lay their eggs. And of course, the hummingbirds, the cutest things ever. So you want to have these in your backyard. Your backyard could be sterile like this. So if you were a pollinator, which yard do you think you would like? On top, you have a very formal yard. It's very clean. It's got a gorgeous lawn. I know the guys go crazy for that. Look at the spacing of the shrubs, and they're even cut to make shapes. It's a beautiful style, but it is a desert to wildlife. There is nothing there for them. Maybe the ants in the ground and the worms, but there's nothing there. Look at the flowers on the bottom. There's plenty there. If you were a pollinator, I'm quite sure you would run to this neighborhood rather than what you're looking at there in the front lawn. So let's just do a little quick thing about color, because that's also a part when you're doing your landscape plan. So I moved into this house in the summer. Most of the winter, I've been making floor plans, color combinations. That was the way I spent the winter. In the past, winter was always just, what am I going to do this year? What am I going to add on? Where did somebody have a trouble and I'm going to change it? So you're always working it. Your brain is always working it. So we've got here the purples and the yellows are a real magnet for the butterflies. The red and the oranges, hummingbirds love that stuff. And the blue and the purples, of course, the honeybees. And look at how cute he's got all that nectar on him. And you have to realize pollinators play a big part in our food that we consume. And without them, we could have a problem with processing and growing vegetables and fruits of that nature. So we'll start with painted ladies, because that is an early plant butterfly that comes out. It's a big hit for the end of school for school kids. A lot of science teachers and regular teachers, you know, the younger grades raise the painted ladies. The problem is they raise them in the classroom, they release them, and there's not very much around at the time. So it's almost like a sad scenario. But again, the kids get to watch it. It's a learning process, and they're all around all summer long. They'll go to any flower, and they're really pretty. Of course, I have a butterfly book, and I look for things. I go, I don't know that one, and you find it. If you go to the Decourt Butterfly Festival, I think it's in June, they have a tremendous garden, and they have a native garden, and there's all kinds of butterflies there. It's always fun to go. Kids love it. And of course, here's our monarchs, and this is common milkweed. It is a very incredible plant, really big, really sturdy, belongs out in the plains, out in the Midwest. And the flowers, the smell when they open up, those big balls of drooping little flowerets, is just amazing. And what you see on the left hand is a female laying her eggs on the underside of the leaves. And that's how I spend my summer, walking around my milkweeds, turning the leaves over, looking for those teeny weeny little eggs. And when I see them, I have to take the whole leaf, take it inside, put it in a box with other teeny weenies, and spray them, keep the leaves moist, and they'll start eating the big leaves, and then they themselves will start getting bigger. And then I'm out there cutting down milkweed plants to bring them in. So the monarch, gorgeous in color. This is a monarch. This is a female because she has no dots on her rear wings, and you'll see the males have that spot. So here's on a zinnia. It was in my yard, and the monarch and the zinnia just went so pretty together. Loved it. Inside this slide, there's a little information about monarchs, and on the right you'll see a coneflower. Coneflower is a big hit with butterflies and birds. So I would highly recommend that you put them in your garden. They need a lot of sun, but now they come in a lot of different colors. But you have to watch out for the cultivars because they don't make as much nectar for the butterflies as do the regular old fashioned purple coneflowers. So always have them, and then have the others for fun because they do come and take a sip from the nectar. These are the most common of the butterflies in our area. The painted lady, Thistle. I have Thistle, but you know, she's kind of spiky. She's kind of you have to put her in a place where nobody's going to get hurt on it, and you know about it. But they're such cute little butterflies. I did have a couple, and I put them in the back corner of my backyard. The black swallow, tiger swallowtail there. That's not the tiger, he's the black swallowtail. That's sitting on, laying an egg on a fennel plant, which I will talk to you about that as well. And then of course the monarch, and you'll see this little dimple mark here on the back of the bottom wing. This is a male. That's a scent gland, and he will send out a fragrance to entice the females to come and join him. And when he finds a female, it is a little bit rough the way he just hooks his abdomen to hers and then takes her up into the trees, and they do their thing. So it's kind of fun to watch, but it's a little upsetting as far as I'm concerned. And then the yellow tiger swallowtail, the biggest butterfly we've got, great fun. Your garden can attract all of these. And what I'm saying is, my husband even got involved because we would sit and have happy hour near the butterfly on our little patio. And I also noticed at the time when I was still teaching that I was getting a lot of commotion, a lot of activity, butterflies coming and going, bees coming and going. Even, you know, the bees you're not really you're a little nervous about, they're coming and going. And there's the tiniest little insects and the biggest insects and the birds. So once you start thinking and paying attention to the label, and if it says it's native and it's for the pollinators or it's a favorite of birds, it has a whole new meaning about gardening. So here we have some samples for butterflies. I know Buddleia is considered an invasive, and I had a number of them in my old house. I was very persistent in cutting down the flowers as soon as they started to look really ragged. I would even wait till they were done. But I have since read that those seeds are so small and they easily get blown and scattered around. They're a problem like in native area, woodlands. that they get in by those streams, and they just get happy there, and they can become invasive. I came across this one with a few names that maybe if you have a few and you recognize, you say, oh, I have one that's not so invasive. I just recently got Miss Molly Butterbush, and I was glad to see her on the list. So I do want to have a couple of them back, because even the hummingbirds go to them. They're a great flower, but you know, you can't have them that many of them. Butterfly weed, the best. They are bright orange. They come back every year. They get bigger, and you know, they have their life expectancy as well. But if you spread the seeds, you know, you're lucky you'll get some more the next season. This is fennel. And I learned about fennel after I was a master gardener. We have to do hours, and I would go to the Hermitage, and I would go to Garrettson Farm in Fairlawn. The Hermitage is in Hohokus. And at the Hohokus, when my first year, I became part of the team that was working on the herb garden that the coordinator there wanted to recreate outside the back door on the Hermitage, where there would have normally been an herb garden. I didn't know anything about herbs. I'm a little Puerto Rican girl. My herbs come from glass jars. That's what I knew. So I got involved into a new era or new arena for herbs, because herbs have several lives. They are for cooking, of course, culinary, that's the first, probably with their ancient prehistoric ancestors, probably were vegetarians. Then they also have medicinal values, and that would certainly put us later into Native Americans and ancient cultures. And then, of course, they have flowers, most of them. And in the past, it was not the thing to do to blend herbs with your flowers and stuff. That's baloney. Now it's freestyle. So I have brought in a lot of my herbs into my garden because of my experience at the Hermitage. Fennel, the first time I ever touched a fennel was at the Hermitage, and it has an anise licorice kind of smell, and it gets really big. It can be like 6 feet tall if it gets a lot of sun. It has those flowers that are like umbrellas, umbria, something like that they call it. So black swallowtails will definitely appear in your backyard if you have any fennel, or dill. Dill will bring them in too, but dill stays kind of small. And the point with a small plant is if you get a black swallowtail that puts a bunch of eggs there, you might come out and find a lot of caterpillars one day, and then the next day find nothing. That's how voracious of eaters they are. So here's our black swallowtail. Great insect. Kids love them. They are so pretty. And you can see the one on the left that he's about ready to go into his chrysalis. And you see the female on the right, she's laying her eggs. And you can see the little teeny weeny eggs. They're just little tiny circles on that beautiful feathery foliage. So those will hatch. And if you go to the bottom right, you'll see those little black caterpillars with the little white saddles, and they've got dots and they got little spikes, and you go, oh my God, they're some kind of an infestation on my dill or my fennel. Not so. That is the first stage of the black swallowtail. And what its camouflage is that it looks like bird poop, which is very clever of Mother Nature. So that gets them through the very first few days, I guess, of survival. Now we're talking about butterfly flowers. Phlox is a big favorite of a lot of my friends. I never really seem to get the hang with phlox. It never does real well with me, but I'm going to give it a try too, because the colors are amazing, and I suspect they last all summer. Black-eyed Susans, the Goldstrom is my favorite because it has those spiky leaves, and the birds will eat the seeds, the butterflies will come in. Joe Pyeweed is a really big flower. Another native that is like, can be invasive, can really take over. Needs a lot of sun, but it really is worth it too. It brings in a lot of pollinators. So now let's talk about, for our butterflies still, purple coneflower. That is the traditional one, but the other colors come into bee balm. Bee balm is a native out west. The story that goes with that, which I like to tell because I think it's so cool, during the Boston Tea Party, 1775, something like that, when they threw all the tea over because they didn't want to pay the taxes to England, they ran into a little problem because this tea came from China, and now they weren't getting any tea. So they decided to go native, like the Native Americans from the plains and the Native Americans in their environment. Native Americans take bee balm, they brew it into a tea. So they substitute for it. But the kicker was they love the bee balm because it's really high in caffeine. So I guess they got a good high out of it, got them going, got them working. Very clever. It's edible. Native peoples would use that. Aster, you need to have aster because at the end of the summer when everybody's kind of looking sad and they're going down, the aster is critical to especially the monarchs to get some nectar because they're going to make one heck of a long trip to travel from New Jersey all the way to Mexico. So you have to also kind of think about flowers for different times of the year, you know. This is a great flower. I have one in my other house. Started as a little tiny thing. This is the button bush. And if you go to the Teaneck Nature Center, they've got a bunch of them in their garden. And they are the cutest little things. It takes them a year or so to get established. But look at these little things. They're just little round puff balls. And of course, look who's enjoying it is a little native hummingbird. They're really interesting. They're trying to promote button bush instead of buddleia. So look at, you know, it's just an option. They get kind of big, but then they end up in the end of the season with berries that are for the birds and fruit for the birds. So that works out pretty nice. And here's a hummingbird. If you don't have a honeysuckle, find a good sunny part in your backyard, get yourself a trellis and get yourself a honeysuckle. Again, they like the oranges and the red. They like the trumpet-shaped flowers. So I found another couple. Hollyhocks, I'm giving them a try this year. They supposedly get very big. I've seen them in other gardens. So I'm going to see if I can do it. And delphinium, I didn't have too much luck with the first time around, but there's such a pretty flower. I might try it again. I'm going slow and easy. See how much I use up in my backyard. Any questions so far, Linda? Anybody looking for any information?
No, but I do want to let everybody know that when you did mention the DeCourt Butterfly Festival, I found out it's going to be on Sunday, July 3rd. And I
it is in July.
I will send everybody out a link after we, as a part of a follow-up, I'll let them know about it.
Oh, good, because they do the tour. You can do
lot of
bird watching. Right, and it's for kids too. They have a whole program set up for kids. So it's worth the trip, and it's a huge park. It's massive, and the birds are always terrific. So definitely bring your binoculars. Okay, so nobody yet. That's fine. At the end, we can talk. These guys, oh, these are waxwings. And my first encounter with them was after I started my little garden. I made an island garden. An island garden is like claiming a piece in the lawn. That my husband went cuckoo about it, but I was adamant. I've done enough for the butterflies and I wanted to bring in the birds. So it started with a nice big bird bath because they love the water and to splash. And then I had went out and did a little research about which shrubs. So when you're talking about birds, you're talking not about nectar, you're talking about seeds and berries. So I made this little island. Started with very tiny shrubs. I didn't do much of anything the first year. Serviceberry, there's a lot of if you go online, you'll see all of them. And I started picking, you pay attention to your heights, pay attention to your light source. I even ended up putting some Mexican sunflowers on the back of it, and that was a tremendous butterfly magnet. So what happened was that we found a baby waxwing. After a few years when we got my berries started coming out, a baby waxwing was like on the ground and my son was freaking out. So we put it back in the shrubs and we waited for the parents to come back because they're very, they were taking care of this little baby. And also look at all these birds that like American holly. That's the picture that we're looking at. I have an American holly and that my guy will slice my fingers if I get too close to him, but I've cut him back. And now I'm taking particular care of him because of all these birds that enjoyed the berries from the hollies. So winterberry was one of the little shrubs. That gets pretty big. This beautyberry, oh, look at that purple berries. That they are eye-catching. And the first time I got a little cluster of those purple flowers, I was ecstatic. And then the button bush makes these, because of the flower, it's so round, it becomes like a sphere, and the birds come and get the berries from that too. So I took that island and I started to just plant shrubs and in between a little bit of flowers, you know, but it was mainly for the birds. So again, the pollinators, they love red. It's a very popular color. These are the native colors for bee balms. And I have the finch here because with bee balm, at the end of the season, it has like a nutty kind of thing in the middle of the flower, and the goldfinch come right in. You hear them calling and you can go out there and see them. So here's the one eating the seeds of the, not only are coneflower is beautiful and great for the butterflies in the fall, this is the food for our finches. The coneflower on the right, you can see, is really pretty dry and the seeds are easily plucked, and that's what the butterfly, the goldfinch is going. To feed them during the summer, you give them Niger in a screened kind of a bird cage. You can go to Amazon or to any of the bird stores. Niger is kind of hard sometimes to get a hold of, but Amazon always seems to have it. So that's my last go-to if I have to. And that will introduce them to your garden and have them coming. And they'll start to notice the coneflowers. And so in the fall, when things start going south and the butterflies start disappearing, you keep these little finches. They stay, a lot of them stay around, some of them migrate, but if you keep them nearby, they're going to remember your garden and they're going to come back. So they are the cutest little things, and their little call, once you recognize it, you go running when you hear them. Okay, so what have I got here? Well, this is when I graduated from Monarch Teacher Network, and I got to put a butterfly on my nose, and the trick of it was getting a mixture of water and sugar and putting it on a kid's nose and putting it on their nose, and it'll stay there for a little bit and have a little bit of a drink from their noses, which is a fun thing. Okay, now let's see. Let's talk now a little bit more about the birds. And here we have the goldfinch on another coneflower. Of course, I told you she's our state bird. Waxwings are gorgeous. I've seen a lot more in Pennsylvania, so they're kind of, I guess, elusive and they need to have the berries. But if you go online, a lot of the trees that produce berries, the waxwings will go for. So they're worth trying to recruit into your yard. Oh, I took this and put this on my thing because it was so cute when I went on the site and I saw that. I said, oh, that's precious. I love that. So I put it on mine too. Okay, is that it? That's the end of it? I thought I had a lot more pictures. That's interesting. Well, I do have some more slides. I was updating, so maybe I picked up the older version. I'm sorry about that. That's my mistake. But in any case, do we have any questions, anything that you might want to talk about that you saw on the slideshow?
And if anybody wants to unmute themselves, there was a question about exactly where DeCourt Park was. I'm coming up with a Lyndhurst address, but like I said,
Right.
we'll send out a, they do have a butterfly guide, and they have a lot of nature walks.
Yes, it's by medieval times, where medieval times used to be. So it's back there. If you get to medieval times, then your GPS will take you through the back. It's kind of a zigzaggy puzzle kind of way. But when you get there, plenty of parking, and certainly on the days when they have the butterfly event, it's pretty packed. But they also have all kinds of things for kids during the year and during the summer, you know, bats and birds of different, birds of prey and stuff. And then they have
a lot of nature walks too. A lot of
nature works with the Audubon is on a regular basis. So
Yes.
You can just go to the Audubon of New Jersey and you can see that there's all kinds of things going on there. So let's see, what else can I tell you? Mexican sunflowers. I don't have a slide of that one, and I don't even have it on, this is not my updated one, but I don't have it on that either. Mexican sunflowers you have to grow by yourselves. You have to get them by seeds. But if you're willing to go order a packet of Mexican sunflowers, these are an orange that are like so iridescent, and the plants get really big. So they have to have a lot of sun. They have to have something to lean against, like a fence or a tree or something where you can post them up and give them some support. But the birds and the butterflies and just go crazy for it. So it's a really beautiful flower. We talked about the honeysuckle. Let's see.
And then somebody was asking where native shrubs can be purchased. Shrubs.
Okay, you know what I'm noticing? I already have been out to a couple of nurseries. A lot of the nurseries are really now starting to put up native plants in areas. So you just need to ask and they will send you in that direction. Isel's what is that road? By the Fashion Center. It's a nice nursery, and they have several tables of native plants. And you've got to be, it's timing is everything. You go one day and they got tons of things, and the next day it's wiped out. So you just have to kind of keep swinging by. But I just got some beautiful salvia. Salvia is a great plant for butterflies and for hummingbirds, because their hummingbirds are smaller. They like to go to the smaller plants, and for just beautiful color for any of the pollinators for them. Another one that I love to go to is Rosler's. It's up in Allendale. And that is they've got acres and great for shrubs. They have a native plant area, an entire area of just the native plants, butterfly gardens. They give classes. So, they're just starting. All the nurseries are really just since Mother's Day, they're starting to get up and started. But
And
you
I
can go,
thought-
yeah, they've
Well, I was
great
gonna say, this
selection.
person seems to be concerned about that they're not cultivars. I don't even know.
Cultivars, okay.
Right.
They're not cultivars. If it says native plant, it is native the way it grows naturally in our environment. Like bee balm, when you go, you see those neon pink and hot purple flowers. Those are cultivars. They've been manipulated. They've been, the horticulturists have manipulated their genes and their seeds, and they've made these new colors. They don't make the nectar that really is needed by the pollinators, but to put one or two in your garden for a kick, that's fun. But the idea is also to go back and make sure you have the natives, more of the natives certainly than the ones that don't give any nutrition for any value. So some flowers that are really pretty, they don't really do anything except look pretty. So if you go with the idea that you're looking for the butterfly symbol or the bird symbol or the bee symbol, you're helping Mother Nature, you're supporting her. And we have a problem with climate change. So the comments are the pollinators, they are a big population, a big community, and it's not just the flying ones. It's also the reptiles and that eat the fruit and drop the seeds elsewhere. So they're doing their part to propagate plants and keep things moving. And the shrubs that give the berries for the birds, they take it off and put it to wherever they want. So they say that if we take care of the pollinators, they could play and have a big impact in reducing climate change and cooling things down. And it's going to be up to us. I mean, it's, get rid of the green. Who wants a lawn? If you're going to have a green, have a couple of islands with a theme. This one's for birds, this one's for butterflies, or this is a certain color. But all of these flowers, you've made that extra attempt to make sure it's something that can be used by Mother Nature and the pollinators. So now it takes flowering and gardening into a new zone, and including herbs now. That's my new epiphany. It makes it very fun, and you get rewarded by sitting in the backyard with all the commotion. You sit with your bird book, you sit with your butterfly book, you have your flower books to look at, and you watch your babies as they grow and take care of them. And it really makes your spring and summer and even fall, because that's when everybody's looking for food, a really terrific time. So I encourage you to take on a new perspective and just start to modify your gardens to be more pollinator friendly, more bird friendly. And I think you'll have more fun, because you can only put so many flowers in the ground and then you're kind of done. So if you start thinking some new process, a new goal, it could rejuvenate you and have you start all over again. Any other questions, Lynn? What's going on?
Yeah, are there any resources that you can recommend for people interested in learning more about specific native plants and flowers for birds and butterflies? Are there any particular books or particular authors that you like?
No, I'm a Google girl. I have to tell you that. Getting books, going to the library and bringing home books with pictures and stories, other gardens that I like to do, and bring them home and look at them and see. That's what the winter's for, doing your research. But if you go online, there's a real big push to go native. There's a lot of garden and nursery places across the country. I've gotten my swamp milkweed from a place that we just do the native. We're very careful with there's no chemistry, there's no chemicals, they're fresh. We keep our strains strong. And I just got the 2 little plants and they look really good. And my swamp milkweeds, they don't last in the winter. So they're like, they're like they're annuals kind of here. But swamp milkweed, it's the pink and the orange together, and it is so pretty. Metropolitan is a tenafly up that way, Tall Men's Pool and stuff. Of course, they have a lot of native stuff. I mean, they have big garden areas, just big fields, and you go out looking. You just have to ask somebody, I'm looking for this plant. So I think my style has been going online and looking and seeing a flower I like, and then doing a little more research. What are its needs? What does it need to be healthy? Who does it attract? And that is doing my homework. And then I go with my list and I said, yeah, this one, what do you got? And that's what right now I'm doing. I learned a lot about hydrangeas. So getting bees there, but they're not out really hydrangeas just yet. They're just starting to come. The ones they have are the big flower ones, not necessarily the ones that the pollinators want to come. If you like Annabelle hydrangeas, they've got a kind of a flat platform, and that's where the butterflies lay on, and that's where the hummingbirds can get on. So it depends on the style of the plant as well. So it's it's an adventure. I would tell you to go to Rosler's. I would highly recommend it. That's like a trip out to a big farm. And I have been out to Wellsweet. That's an herb garden. I'm going with my girlfriend again. It's a bit of a ride. I think it's about an hour away. But you know what? You find these places and you make it an outing. You get a couple of your girlfriends who want to do some gardening, and you go together, and you are always going to find something cool and new, and you give it a shot, because you don't know if it's going to work out in your garden or in your environment, but you give it a shot anyway.
Well, Rossler's is actually Rossler's is right next to us. Our actual high school is in Allendale. So
is it Allendale?
Everybody on this call knows Rossler's pretty well.
Oh yes, I know them too. So that is a good
tip to actually go and as you were saying too, that the people that are there are so knowledgeable of what plants that they actually have.
And they have classes. If you go on, they have classes for doing a native garden or doing a pollinator garden. So they have the classes, and then you're sitting right there in the garden too. So it's great fun. And they have a great selection. So when I'm looking with my hydrangeas, I'll be waiting to go to them, because they know what they're talking about, and their plants always look very healthy. And the shrubs I've bought in the past from them, you have choices, smaller, a little bigger, a little more bigger if you want to spend the more money. So you have options. I like going to that place. That is like an event.
Well, we are getting thank yous for sharing all of your knowledge and enthusiasm.
Thank you.
And it is true. It's your enthusiasm is hopeful. We have our other problem here, as I told you before, we have a big deer problem here. So but I have heard, and we were kind of discussing this a little bit too, about sometimes the smells, the deers don't necessarily like all the different smells. And when you start thinking about herbs as well, or some of the other flowers as well, that at least can maybe hinder them for a little bit.
It's the aromas are a little bit strong. So like rosemary, what is the sage,
Lavender, I heard.
Lavender, right? So, if you're not sure, you can look it up, and you put them in between, when you have your big flowers, there's always those little tiny spots that are kind of bare, and you want to put something little in there. The herb is the one. And plus, then you don't have to go to the grocery store every time and buy a whole pack for like $5 when you got one growing in your yard. You just need a few strips. Also, when you have cocktails, like I would take the rosemary and throw it in my cocktail, and you have that smell while you're taking that sip, you're getting that smell. Or you put a little bit of bee balm inside, not the bee balm, and the mints, the different flavored mints, the pineapples, they have so many varieties, I can't even, the chocolate, they've got all kinds of things. All you need is a few little leaves and throw it in your cocktail, and you have taken yourself to another dimension. And that's a lot of fun.
People are agreeing with you too about Rossler's, and also saying oregano could be another one too.
Yes, yeah, yeah. And even fennel, a piece, if you have a fennel plant.
I was wondering about that.
Delicious, fabulous. And it's, It's such an unusual plant and people don't expect it. It's the big granddaddy of a little tiny dill. The dills are very small. The fennels are big. They're hard to come by. You don't always see them. I was able this year to grab a couple and I was happy because sometimes they're just not around anymore. So you have to be fast. You have to know what you're looking for. You have to go with your list and be prepared.
Mhm. Yeah, it's true. That's what people are saying the same thing too. You can use it like oregano for ground cover, or like you said, if there's a little hidden thing in the smell,
Mhm.
and then the added benefit of using the herbs for yourself. Well, I would like to thank everybody that came today. And Linda, again, you did your enthusiasm and your knowledge. It was fun. And when I do the follow-up, I'll also include the monarchwatch.org because I think people might get a kick too out of when you
Oh, yeah. I mean, I
watch
had
where these
originally a
butterflies
video.
are going.
Go, and I would tell them, go onto YouTube and go see a video about monarchs and their migration. They do, the stop and thing that shows you, the eggs getting hatched, and they have all the visuals that could show you how these animals live. And my heart, I love them to have so many pieces of jewelry with monarchs, and when you start doing this butterfly thing, they are all over, and it makes summer sitting and just watching to become so much more fun than just sitting on your patio. There's a lot going on.
Well, with that was perfect. So with that, thank you very much. And again, thank you, everyone. And then now we're just about, the weather is just turning.
Hallelujah.
And I think we can start getting our gardens going. So thank
Yes,
you, Linda, for sharing your knowledge.
I thank you for having me. I always enjoy talking to them. Sorry we were not in person.
Yeah. Maybe next time.
I'm looking forward to back in person. I've started to go to a few small groups, so that's been nice. And
Yes.
just having eye-to-eye contact, but I know you were all looking at me, so that's good.
Okay. All right. And take care, everyone.
All right. Thanks, Lynn. Do you want to talk a second?
Bye now. Well, I have to end the meeting.
Oh, you have to end the Zoom. All right. Well, we'll talk. I'll text you.